Hello and welcome to PM Express on a day that organized labor here in Ghana decided to call off their intended strike action less than 24 hours to go, and they are citing several reasons. But on this day, we also need to discuss an important geopolitical issue because it's something that has implication on all of us, wherever we are across the globe. You remember that a year ago, Israel launched an attack on Gaza with the goal of freeing its citizens who had allegedly been taken to Gaza as hostages. Now, according to the BBC, the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an unprecedented assault on Israel on 7 October with hundreds of gunmen infiltrating communities near the Gaza Strip. About 1,200 people were killed and more than 250 were taken to Gaza as hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Now, Israel went to war to retrieve its citizens, but in that space, more than 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed in air and artillery strikes carried out by Israeli military in response. BBC quotes Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry as its source. Today, we sit with His Excellency, Mr. Roy Gilad, Ambassador Designate to the Embassy of Israel, Ambassador Designate of Israel to Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone to try and understand the issues better and also understand when Israel will pull out of these wars they are fighting in now. Be my guest. Let's interrogate these issues together. My name is Samuel Kojo-Brace, and I'm sitting in for your regular host, Evans Mensah. Stay with us. Welcome back from the break. Now, PM Express is brought to you by Syntex Tanks. Now, Ghana, get ready for the biggest giveaway from Syntex Tank. Syntex is visiting 15 communities, giving them free water. This is to say thank you, Ghana, for making Syntex the #1. Syntex was the first to introduce double-layer tanks in Ghana. And you also know that Syntex tanks come in so many colors and was first to come out with inner white layer. So when it's not Syntex, forget about it. Now, if you are a community and you want to benefit from the Syntex free water giveaway, just log on to their social media handles at Syntex Ghana and nominate your community. The more you nominate, the better your chances of the coming. Remember, it's Syntex. Syntex tank. Not be any tank, be tank. The correct tank, be Syntex tank. Syntex tank, air strong, air tough. Now, the Academic Times Ghana is an incoming graphic and online publication that is aiming to collaborate with university authorities to publish the research work of students in some reform. So students who spend so many hours and resources to conduct researches, but you know, the report will be on tables. This publication will give them the opportunity to then do that. Let me welcome to the studio His Excellency Roy Gilad, who is the Ambassador Designate of the State of Israel to Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. And we're going to have this chat. Now, looking at his profile, he really fit for this conversation because I'm told that he holds a bachelor's degree in Middle Eastern Studies from the University of Tel Aviv, master's degree in Middle Eastern Studies from the Hebrew University. He also has a postgraduate degree in National Security from the Israeli Military College for National Defense in Haifa University. Again, I read that he's served with the National Defense College, Israeli Defense Forces between 2011 and 2012. Well, good evening and thanks for coming.
Good evening, Samuel. Thank you very much for hosting me.
Okay. Now, just today, I was reading that Israeli army continues its siege in northern Gaza for a fifth day, killing dozens of people and forcing thousands to flee. Israeli army attacks a group of journalists in a place called Jabalia, killing one and critically wounding Al Jazeera camera operator Fadi Al-Wahidi in the neck. Now, the UNWRA says at least 7 schools sheltering displaced people are being evacuated, and that Israeli attacks have forced the agency to, quote, shut down life-saving services, unquote. Now, in Gaza, at least 42,010 people have been killed, and 97,720 wounded in Israeli attacks since October 2023. In Israel, we understand that at least 1,139 people were killed in the Hamas-led attacks on October 7, and more than 200 people were taken captive. It's been 1 year since October 2023. When will this end?
This will end when the Hamas lay their arms, or when they will be disarmed, or they can simply leave the Gaza Strip. Israel is determined that the event, the massacre we had exactly a year ago, will not happen again. We cannot trust the Hamas. We turned a blind eye from them for too long. They armed themselves, and then they came and they caused this terrible massacre in which 1,200 Israelis were butchered, 251 were abducted. We are done with the Hamas. We have to make sure that those people will not control Gaza anymore. In other words, we are adamant of bringing a regime change in Gaza.
Why do you want to do that?
Because we read the Hamas charter very clearly, and they say, they don't hide it, they say there is no room for a sovereign Jewish entity in the Middle East. And too long we thought that this is on record, but are not going to implement their agenda. And then on the 7th of October, they showed, not only us, everybody, that they mean business. They mean to eradicate the Jewish sovereign entity in the Middle East, and we have no place to go. We are willing and we want to live side by side next to the Palestinians, in Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, but we can live with Palestinians that can live next to us, not instead of us.
You describe 1,200 in your words as massacre. How then would you describe 42,010 people killed?
First, I'll tell you two things, Samuel. First of all, I don't know how accurate are the numbers. You yourself said it's coming from Hamas sources. I do agree, however, that there was a big collateral damage. And yet, when you have around 40,000 Hamas activists that are hiding or using a population of 2 million people as human shields, I don't think that any other army in the world could do a better job. Not the Americans in Afghanistan, nor the Brits in Iraq. When you fight terrorists that are hiding behind human shields, like Boko Haram in Nigeria, if you want to bring it closer to the African continent, this is a very sensitive and complicated mission. You cannot do such a mission without having any collateral damage. We have tried to limit the collateral damage to a minimum. Obviously, we're not perfect. What we did, everything we can do in order to limit it. But I think the ones that you need to point the finger and blame him is the Hamas terrorists. They brought a disaster on their own people. And one thing more I'll tell you, Samuel, the bigger this number is, Hamas activists are happier because they know that the pressure on Israel is going to be bigger, that you are going to ask me this question. The Hamas leaders are happy when the number of casualties, of civil casualties in Gaza is bigger. They are destroying the Palestinian people.
But they are not the one throwing the bombs. We've seen on video, on TV, the sort of distractions in the Gaza Strip, which are coming as a result of bombs that Israel is dropping.
2 million
that's your making.
Yeah, 2 million people living in an area which is around 60 by 4, around 240 square kilometers. This is the most congested place in the world, all around the world. There is no way we could eradicate or bring an end to the Hamas military control of Gaza without causing a military collateral damage. Again, I'm not sure that the numbers published by Hamas sources are true. I do know that the collateral damage happened. I'm not sure this campaign could have been done in a better way. And as I told you before, I think that we are near the end of the campaign. We still didn't achieve our main goal, which is the release of the 101 Israelis which are still taken under captivity, but we are very close in bringing an end to the Hamas military ability to control Gaza.
How many Israelis have lost their lives in this battle?
Well, in the battle itself, 1,200 Israelis, okay. 1,200, and then during the campaign in Gaza, few hundreds more, but those were already soldiers. Most of the 1,200 that were butchered during the massacre were simply citizens that were sleeping in their beds, and that's how the massacre happened.
Okay, but in this campaign, you are targeting civilian places as well. Why that? Because I read that there's a camp where there are a lot of schools that shelter these displaced people. You've been bombing all these places as well.
Indeed. Those places, unfortunately, schools, sometimes clinics, have been places where Hamas activists found shelter, thinking that Israel is going to keep distance from those places. In the cases that we have attacked those schools or clinics, we told all the civilians to get far away from those places, and yet we could not agree to a situation where Hamas activists, Hamas terrorists are hiding in those clinics, in those schools, and finding a shelter in those places. This is actually a war between an organized army, the Israeli Defense Forces, and a terror organization that they have no clause to differentiate between them and the civil population, which is number one in the rule of law. Soldiers should have uniform that they can be identified as belonging to one army. That's not the case in Gaza. Those people, they are dressed like you and me, they are hiding behind the population, and then when they see an Israeli soldier, they put up the gun and they bring him down. So this war is a dirty war, but we did not set the rules of the war. It's the other side.
But they took, 1,200 is enough. It's a lot of numbers. But you've taken far more in this campaign.
I agree with you. And as I told you before, the side that should be blamed for it, the party who brought disaster on the Palestinian people is the Hamas people. Out of their wish, out of their agenda to wipe Israel off the map, they have brought a disaster. So whether the number is 40,000 or 30,000 or 20,000, the party, the side that should be blamed is the Hamas people, the Hamas activists, Yahya Sinwar, Muhammad Def, the leaders who basically planned the attack against Israel. They are responsible for this huge tragedy that is happening now to the Palestinian people in Gaza. They should be blamed. And I think the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah is aware of it. And many Arab leaders are aware of it, whether they are saying it loudly or not. And I said again, he who should be blamed for this disaster is Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas who planned the attack on the 7th of October.
But I know that Israel has very good intelligence systems, right? When it comes to intelligence gathering, you have some of the sophisticated ways of gathering it. Why are you then not able to tell that, for example, in this Al-Said hospital in Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp is a place where people who need health, need medical attention will be, and therefore nothing should justify you launching on that particular hospital just because you're after people who you deem as being part of the militant group who are causing this trouble.
So let me tell you two things. First of all, our intelligence is not perfect. We were taken by a huge surprise on the 7th of October. We didn't know it's happening. We didn't know it's coming. So even our intelligence, thank you for the compliment, but our intelligence is not perfect. Now, look, I don't know the exact details of what happened in the
Al-Said hospital.
Yeah, even though I can tell you, as one who spent the first 100 days of the war as a representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in their army headquarters in Tel Aviv, we are doing a huge effort to make sure that civilians will not be hurt. It's impossible to eliminate all the collateral damage. And again, I can tell you one thing for sure. Israel never hit civilians intentionally. We never do it on purpose. The only reason that it happens is when Hamas terrorists are using those civilians as human shields. Hamas terrorists actually manipulated us into an impossible place. Either we put our weapon down and we say, okay, we don't do anything, and then there are no collateral damage and there are no civil casualties, or we fulfill our mission, our aim to bring an end to this threat, to this challenge of Hamas, that if we'll not do it this time, they said it time and again, we are going to have another 7th of October, and another 7th of October, and another 7th of October. We don't have a death wish. We intend to stay as a sovereign state in the Middle East, and everybody who challenged this reality, whether it is Hamas in the south or Hezbollah in the north, we are there to fight for our rights.
And you're achieving those targets?
Well, as you know, Samuel, now we are engaged in a second campaign in the north. And actually, it's more than 2 campaigns. We have a campaign against Hamas in Gaza, against Hezbollah in the north, against the Houthis in Yemen, against the militias in Iraq, against militias in Syria, above all against Iran. So Israel is engaged simultaneously. I think if you'll count, you'll get to 7 fronts or 6 fronts altogether. And we are adamant to succeed in guaranteeing our future. We are in the Middle East to stay. We have no intention to go anywhere.
You're not worried about the numbers who are falling because of your intervention? For example, Al Jazeera describes your war in Gaza as, quote, the deadliest modern conflict for journalists. They go ahead to name 3 journalists of theirs who have been killed while they were reporting on the conflict. Samer Abu Daga, they have Ismail Al-Ghul and Rami Al-Rifi. They say at least 175 journalists have been killed in the Gaza war. Isn't Israel worried by this number where journalists who are doing their work, like I am doing, are dying because of this war?
Samuel, I would hesitate to lean on Al Jazeera as a reliable source. And on top of it, we know that during this barbaric attack on the 7th of October a year ago, there were Al Jazeera journalists. They were both on the payroll of Al Jazeera, but also on the payroll of Israel.
Really?
Yeah, there were...
on the payroll of both countries,
indeed,
I mean, Israel and Hamas.
Indeed, and on top of it, Al Jazeera is far from being a reliable source.
Why do you say so? Because they don't report what favors you?
They are being financed by Qatar, and their activity is forbidden, not only in Israel, it's in Egypt, and Jordan, and many other states. They are known to be the, I would say, to echo the agenda of Qatar, to echo some very radical agenda. They are completely not a reliable source. Now, it is true that journalists have been killed during this campaign. But as I told you, when you conduct a campaign in which you try to bring down 40,000 terrorists that are hiding behind a population of 2 million citizens in an area which is 204 square kilometers, I don't think we could have done a better job.
But these 40,000 are all not terrorists, as you put it.
Indeed.
Some are civilians.
Look, that's another problem. All of them are terrorists, but they don't put uniform to show that they are terrorists. So at the night, they are attacking us. During the day, they simply go among the population. Even our ability to say this is a civilian population and this is a terrorist is being challenged. Conducting a war against terrorists is exactly like the wars in Nigeria is conducting against Boko Haram. Many African states are, Ethiopia and Kenya are conducting against Al-Shabaab that is crossing from Somalia. There is no difference whatsoever. Every state that is fighting terrorists that are hiding behind a civil population are going to have the same challenge. And if you eliminate the possibility of Israel to defend itself, eventually it will come to your own home. It will come to the Nigerian government and to many governments to the Mozambique government and many governments in Africa that are fighting terror. There is no difference whatsoever between the wars that Israel conducts in so many fronts and the wars that so many African governments are conducting against terror organizations from their own land.
But you blame a media organization like Al Jazeera for being used as a pawn in this fight.
Indeed.
You should have watertight evidence to prove that. I mean, just they being funded by Qatar cannot be enough for you to then generalize that they are being used as a pawn in this fight.
So, Samuel, the difference between you and I is that I speak Arabic very well. I watch Jazeera often, and Al Jazeera are part of the war. They are part of the campaign. They are part of the media campaign. It is by all means not a reliable source. It is not an objective source. They declared time and again that they are actually a part of the campaign. Hamas is fighting with weapons, and Al Jazeera is fighting through the media. As clear as that. Okay. And I'm watching them day in and day out. It is not a media source. It is not a news source. It is a propaganda machine.
Well, you said you spent the first 100 days of this war at the Israeli headquarters.
Indeed. Army headquarters.
Army headquarters. Within that period, what were the information you were gathering from Hamas that sort of determined your reaction, or the action you took in that strip?
So obviously, Samuel, I cannot get into too many details. As I told you before, Hamas took us by a great surprise on the 7th of October. We shall draw the conclusion after the war. In the day after, we shall have to have a serious search within ourselves what happened. This was a huge blunder. You gave a compliment earlier on to our intelligence. Something went very wrong. But we know now one thing. We have to bring down this organization. We have to bring an end to this terror organization. We have to bring an end to Yahya Sinwar, either by putting our hands on him or by him leaving the Gaza Strip, as Arafat did way back in Beirut in 1982. We have to make sure that together with the US, together with the Palestinian Authority, together with Egypt and Jordan, we have to bring or to create an administration in Gaza that the welfare of Gaza will be their interest and not to eradicate the state of Israel.
Are you close to ending that operation, that campaign, as you call it, in Gaza?
The end of the campaign in Gaza will be only when we should be able to release the last Israelis that are abducted there. Those 101 Israelis are living now in tunnels. If you can call it living, I think they are buried alive. I'm not sure that all the 101 are still alive, but unless we get all the people back, either bodies, God forbid, or hopefully living people, the campaign in Gaza is not going to be over.
Which means we don't know when it's going to end. And within that period, we don't even know, you put the number 2 million. So within that period,
the civil population.
Yeah, when we don't know when it's going to end, it means that that number is in jeopardy of losing out, because you can kill anybody at all within this campaign.
Look, this huge population that I personally feel very sorry for, very pity for, they hate the Hamas terrorists. There is nothing that they want more than to get rid of the terrorists. Those terrorists only brought tragedy and misery into Gaza. And again, I'm telling you time and again, Samuel, and we are telling everybody, Hamas could put an end immediately to this tragedy by putting the weapon down and say, enough is enough. I think we might even reach a deal that the leaders might leave Gaza and go somewhere. But as long as Hamas is not laying the weapon, then we still have a mission to complete. The key, the solution to solve this tragedy, this great tragedy in Gaza, is within the Hamas hand, and they don't want to use it. As I told you before, the bigger the number of casualties are, the happier those people are.
What happens if they lay down their tools? You say they have the key by doing that.
If they lay down the weapon, if they release our prisoners, if they are willing to leave Gaza, then Israel, then that's the end of the campaign.
But you don't want to leave Israel, but you want them to leave Gaza. How is that?
It's very clear. We are willing to live next to the Palestinians. They are not willing to live next to us. There are many Palestinians that are willing to live next to Israel. With those Palestinians, we have no problem. We need to negotiate with them in order to reach an agreement that will allow both sides to live one next to another. But how can we live next to people that want to get rid of us? People that after the 7th of October said, this is going to happen time and again. We are not done with you Jews. This time we reach nearly Beersheba, which is in the south. Next time we'll reach Tel Aviv. They were so happy with the achievement, quote unquote, that they had on the 7th of October. So they said very clearly, this is only the beginning. One thing we know since 7th of October, we take those people seriously. And if they say that they're going to come and again, we are going to make sure that this will not happen.
I mean, the UN, do you believe in the UN, first of all?
We do believe in the UN. We have many challenges with the General Assembly. We have challenges with the Secretary General, as I guess you know, but we are part of the organization.
So once you are part of the organization, you're bound by what the organization believes in, right?
Well,
now, the organization, once you're a member, you're bound by it. But the same organization says your presence in the Palestinian territory is unlawful.
Well, in the UN, you have the Security Council and you have the General Assembly. In the General Assembly, there is automatic majority for the other side. We know it for years, it's not new. In the Security Council, where Ghana was a member until last year, the situation is more balanced. As for the future of the Israeli presence in what is known as the Palestinian terrorists, quote unquote, this has to be determined in the future as an outcome of negotiations, direct negotiations between the Palestinian side and the Israeli side. This is not going to be solved with arm and with force as Hamas believes. So I think getting rid of the Hamas will only advance the chances of peace and the chances to reach a direct negotiation between both sides. And each time the UN is trying to give like easy life for instance, we say the Palestinian side needs to be disarmed. They need to be also de-radicalized. But as long as they are running a campaign, a military campaign against Israel by the Hamas, and a political campaign by the Palestinian Authority, we feel that we are in defense. And we say the future of the Palestinian territories, the future of the Palestinian people, the future of the Palestinian Authority will be decided around the table after direct talks between Israelis and Palestinians. The Americans can be there, maybe other monitors. the future of this area has not been decided yet. And when it will be decided, it will be decided by Israelis and Palestinians sitting on both sides, on the two sides of the table, not by the UN.
But this was long decided, that you allow those areas occupied by the Arabs to have their, for them to have their freedom. So why is it so difficult for you to leave Gaza for them?
Look, if you go back to 1948, it was decided, the UN that you spoke about, have decided to establish two independent states. Mm-hmm. The Israelis at the time accepted it, the Arabs and the Palestinians rejected it. Mm. And since then, we are messed up. There is nothing that we want more than establishing peace and stability in the area. We are not happy with the situation. But we feel that time and again, Arabs, I'm talking mainly about the Palestinians, were trying to put an end to this Jewish entity in the Middle East known as the State of Israel. Again, personally, and I think most Israelis believe that even though now we live in a complete darkness in the Middle East, there is a way forward. And there are Palestinians that are willing to go forward. I always say that actually Israel is facing two Palestinian coalitions. One coalition is the unable, and the other one is the unwilling. Hamas is the unwilling. They are unwilling to live next to Israel. And the first coalition is the unable. The Palestinian Authority is willing to live next to Israel, but so far they are unable to enforce their authority even in the West Bank. They are based in Ramallah, which is in the center of the West Bank, and less than 15 kilometers or 20 kilometers from there in Jenin, the Hamas is also controlling the streets. And the Palestinian Authority policemen cannot get to Jenin, cannot get to the refugee camps in Jenin and many other places which are being controlled by Hamas influence from Gaza. So obviously, I think you should understand us that if we put our security within the hands of the Palestinian Authority, you know, the West Bank is just 10 kilometers from Ben Gurion Airport. I don't know if you've been to Israel, but he or she who comes to Israel, we have one airport. This is Ben Gurion Airport in the center of the land. Mm. This airport, if there is an enemy which is controlling the hills over Ben Gurion Airport that are part of what you call the Palestinian area, then we are done. So Israel is a very small place. It is much smaller than Ghana. Okay. Much, much smaller. And our main challenge is that we lack what is known as strategic depth. The meaning of lacking a strategic depth is that if you make a mistake, it might be your last mistake. Mm.
So why aren't you exploring, because it will take so many years for you to extinguish Hamas, and I'm sure you know that it won't take 1, 2, 3 years to let Hamas go away from the Gaza Strip? I'm
not so sure. I think this campaign that we see in the last year has caused a huge damage to Hamas. I don't think they understood that Israel is going to go into Gaza. I think they expected that that it will be enough for Israel to conduct some air attacks against Gaza and then start the negotiations concerning the release of the hostages, 251 at the time a year ago. I'm not sure they expected Israel to react the way we reacted. And the way that we reacted is, again, it has some aims. But as for the Hamas, we are adamant of putting an end to its military control of Gaza. We are not there yet, but we are very close to reaching this target, this aim. And I don't think it's a matter of years. I think it's a matter of months, few months.
Really? For you to, take them out of Gaza?
I'm not talking about the ideology. They still enjoy the support of some of the people. I think most of the people in Gaza, most of the 2 million, they understand that the group who is in charge, who is responsible for the tragedy is the Hamas people. There are among those 2 million people that support ideologically the Hamas, that are being influenced by radical Islamic movement, and they believe that there is no room for a Jewish sovereign state in the Middle East. Those people are there. We have no intention to fight the ideology. We know that you cannot fight an ideology. What we aim is to fight the means, the weapons that make this ideology work. If it's only the ideology, if it's only a political party, that's fine. But we're not happy with the party as well. But this organization, this terror organization, should not have an army. The Gaza Strip needs to be disarmed, just as South Lebanon. The terrorists, if they want to conduct their own parties, again, it doesn't make us happy. But a party is a party, ideology is ideology. But weapon is a weapon.
Well, let me take you to Lebanon, because there too you are causing a lot of, havoc. And the U.S. says Israel must avoid conducting military operations in Lebanon like it has in Gaza, which means that your ally, U.S., is even worried about your tactics. So if your ally is worried about your approach, you as the entity, aren't you worried that your allies who support you in all of that are beginning to worry about your approaches?
No, I think we are coordinated with the Americans. Obviously, there are some differences, but the main difference between us and other allies of the US in the Middle East is that we can handle our own wars. We fight our own wars. We are not leaning on any other army. Obviously, the United States is our number one strategic ally, and we are trying to coordinate with them all our moves. Obviously, there are places where we take an independent, sovereign action, which is fine, and I think the Americans understand it. That's number one. Number two, as for what you said, Samuel, in the beginning, I think the party or the group, they should be very happy with what Israel is, the campaign that Israel now is conducting in South Lebanon, is the Lebanese government in Beirut. Because the Hezbollah destroyed the state of Lebanon. Hezbollah was a burden. Hezbollah was a tragedy, brought tragedy on Lebanon. It was a disaster of Lebanon. Lebanon was a failed state. And the reason why Lebanon was a failed state is because a terrorist organization supported and financed by Iran, clearly, Iran is not hiding it, hijacked the government of Lebanon. He hijacked Beirut. And now, if indeed bringing an end to Hezbollah is going to be more complicated than bringing an end to Hamas. But if we shall manage to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River and make the Lebanese army and UNIFIL, including your regiment, the Ghanan regiment, deploy along the border with Israel, known as the Blue Line, and fulfill what is known as the 1701 Security Council resolution, then maybe it will be the first move in the government of Beirut, the government of Lebanon, returning the sovereignty to this failed state and making it a serious state. It is doable, it is possible, the United States supports it, France supports it, I hope that the government of Ghana supports it. Everybody, every state who would like to see peace and stability and tranquility in the Middle East should support the eradicating, the elimination of both Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. There is no difference between the two whatsoever.
But you mentioned that Hezbollah, is controlling Lebanon, or is to control
currently. Yes.
Why should that be an issue for Israel? Why shouldn't it be Lebanon itself dealing with its own problem? But Israel wants to.
That's a good question. If it would be only an internal domestic political conflict in Lebanon, it's not of our business. But once those people are deployed along the border, and when we are looking on the other side of the border, we do not see the Lebanese army, nor do we see, unfortunately, the Ghanaian regiment within UNIFIL, which is a UN peacekeeping force.
You don't see them there?
No, because what we see is only the terrorists of Hezbollah. And they say also, day in and day out, we are going to come after you. So we believe that a sovereign state like Lebanon should have its own army deployed along the border together with a UN peacekeeping force, including the Ghanaian regiment. And again, we turned a blind eye for too long. Now it's a different game in the Middle East, and we are adamant of pushing Hezbollah to the north, on the other side of the Litani River, and maybe also to disarm the organization. Now, and this organization, currently, they have much more ammunition than Hamas. They have much more rockets, much more missiles. They are, in a sense, much more dangerous than the Hamas. But if indeed, there will be an international coalition that will start from Beirut. And now you can hear the president of Lebanon, Mr. Mikhyati, he's talking about the implementation of 1701 resolution, which means that Hezbollah should be disarmed and the Lebanese army should take its place in South Lebanon and later on in all Lebanon. So this coalition that will start from Beirut, goes through Paris, goes through Washington. Hopefully also Ghana will be part of this coalition. I know there is a big Lebanese community here in Ghana. I believe that we can bring an end to the control of Hezbollah in Lebanon and make this failed state of Lebanon a serious state, a sovereign one, with his own army and own establishment.
We're still having a chat here with the Israeli ambassador designate to the embassy of Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, Roy Gillard. We'll take a short break here. When we come back, we'll try and gauge when and where they intend that this fight in Lebanon will end. Stay. Back from the break, still here with the Israeli ambassador designate to the embassy of Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, Roy Gillard. Roy, there's a picture that I picked from the internet, and I want you to look at it. These are families who are sleeping on the street of neighboring country. They are from Lebanon, and I mean, if you see something like this, doesn't it break your heart?
Of course it does. Of course it does. When I saw this picture, Samuel, it wasn't clear to me whether those people are Lebanese or Israelis.
They are Lebanese.
No, now I understand, okay. But before you spoke, or are they Israelis that are living in shelter? Because nowadays, as we speak now, from this wonderful studio, there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis that are living in shelter, that there are 60,000 or maybe even 70,000 Israelis that were forced to leave the northern border, the upper Galilee and the lower Galilee, because of the challenge of the war in South Lebanon, and to evacuate into the center. Many people who lived around Gaza still didn't return to their home place. So this picture could be in Lebanon, but at the same time it could be in Israel. What we are having now in the Middle East, Samuel, is a huge tragedy. This is a tragedy for all the innocent people in Israel, in Lebanon, in the West Bank, and even in Gaza. But Lebanon and Gaza were hijacked by terrorists. There will not be peace, stability, and tranquility in the area unless we are getting rid of the terrorists. And this is the campaign we are conducting both in South Lebanon and in Gaza. Yes, my heart breaks apart when I see it, but again, you can see, unfortunately, the same picture in Lebanon, but also in Israel.
So where are you in terms of winning the war in Lebanon? Because there are so many families who are losing innocent people because of that campaign.
So the campaign in Lebanon might take longer time. Our disadvantage is that Hezbollah is a more dangerous and more challenging enemy than Hamas. The advantage is that the area is not so congested as Gaza, so we do not expect a big number of civil casualties. And yet, Hezbollah, as much as we've managed to eliminate its leader Hassan Nasrallah and also the number 2, 3, 4, and 5, still didn't say the last word. Today, Haifa, our biggest city in the north, was attacked with dozens of rockets. So the campaign in in Lebanon, is not reaching the end yet. Unfortunately, I believe it is going to last for some time. But again, I believe that the key is within the coalition I spoke about. First of all, the government in Beirut, that if you listen to what they say lately, since the last 10 days, they are talking differently than they spoke before, because the fear of the Hezbollah, they were afraid from Hezbollah before, because Hezbollah really was managing Lebanon.
But if you hear them now, are they towing your way? Are they coming home?
They are saying very clearly, the leadership in Lebanon, Beirut, the Prime Minister Mikyati, the leader of the Druze, Jumbalat, and other people, that 1701 needs to be implemented. The meaning of 1701 resolution, Security Council resolution from 2006, is very clear. It is the pullback of Hezbollah terrorists north of the Litani River. It is the deployment or the redeployment of the Lebanese army, including UNIFIL, including your regiment, along the border, and also the disarming of Hezbollah. Israel is supporting 1701. The Lebanese government never did. And if they did, it was deep in their heart. They never spoke about it publicly. Now, they speak about it publicly. So I think the biggest winner from the Israeli campaign in South Lebanon, next to Israel, can be the state of Lebanon. I think this campaign, if successful, this military campaign of Israel, if successful, might be the beginning of the rebuilding of the state of Lebanon.
Ghana is home to both Lebanese and Israelis.
Indeed.
So, of course, it will be hard for us to choose part, right? If we don't, will you be disappointed?
Look, I'm not involved within the Lebanese community here, but I have a feeling that if the Lebanese community or the Lebanese people that are living here, if they really care for the interest of the state of Lebanon, the interest of Beirut, the capital, and not the neighborhood Dahia, which is the home of the Hezbollah terrorists, if they really care for Lebanon, they should support this campaign. Because this military campaign is about to bring an end to the Hezbollah challenge over Israel, but also to the Hezbollah challenge over the government in Beirut.
So, I mean, if the government of Ghana abstains from either supporting you or supporting, the Lebanese army from fighting, or if the government of Ghana abstains from supporting Israel, will you be disappointed?
Yes, because I think if the government of Ghana seeks, like I believe they do, stability, peace, and tranquility in the Middle East, and if they are supporting the future of Israel as a sovereign independent state within the Middle East, and let me remind you that since your establishment as a free state in 1957, we shared very good relationship between Jerusalem and Accra.
Okay.
If indeed this is high on the agenda of the Ghanaian government.
Okay.
They need to support both campaigns against Hezbollah and against the Hamas, because if those campaigns are not going to be successful, there's not going to be any peace or any stability in the Middle East.
His Excellency Roy Gillard, Ambassador Designate to the Embassy of Israel to Ghana, Liberia and Sierra Leone. I'm grateful to you for having the chat.
Samuel, thank you very much.
We pray that there is peace in the Middle East so that you can all coexist peacefully.
So do we.
Well, thanks to you two for doing the viewing. My name has been Samuel Kojo Brace. We meet again, God willing, some other time. Please, until then, be good.